What I tell people is this: who you think you are, you'll become. So if we're already starting from a place of inferiority, we'll use things to prove we're right. So you're great at math and I'm horrible at it. Oh, I'm just not as smart as you are. Or you're amazing at this sport and I'm average at it. I guess I'm not meant for success in my life. Right. I was a person of worth and value, trying to prove myself. And those things came along, the insecurity, the imposter syndrome, and all of that. But there was this understanding that there was more to life than what I was living.
Hi, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. Now, as a founder of Freedom for Life and the author of the transformation leadership book, Life Mastery Living Life by Design, what does peak performance mean to you?
It's a great question, Mark. I think for me, in the context of the things that we talk about, peak performance for me is it equals the definition of life mastery. So what I tell people is life mastery is me living the life I'm created for at the highest level I'm created for in every area of life. And so for me, peak performance isn't getting success in one area or having some goal that's been achieved, but really me maximizing my life so that the maximum that I'm supposed to have, the person that's supposed to show up, the best of who I am, is happening spiritually, relationally, vocationally, physically, financially, and in every single area of my life.
How does one go about identifying what's the max they can achieve, and how do you even go about it?
I think that's a great question. So for us, the things that we start with is identity. Who are you created to be? And the reason I do that, Mark, is because a lot of times we're looking for others' idea of what success looks like, right? Mark is amazing at the things he's doing in health and wealth and all of those things. So I need to imitate him so I can be like him. And what I found in my own life was when I was imitating other people and their version and vision of success, it always felt like I was shooting for second place. I was always trying to measure up to what they thought. But when I started to really unpack, hey, what's my created value? What's the secret sauce that is my life and that's my impact in the world? When you start to understand that, you're able to maybe start to gain a vision and a dream of what your life could look like. And so it starts with that. And it really goes into, I'm sure, some of the things you talk and teach about. It's visualization. It's saying, okay, if I understand who I am and the character I bring to my relationships, then what's that dream life that I'm looking for? What's the relationship of impact and love and vulnerability and authenticity, right? It's a vision statement that you go for. And then when you find that you're in that place of achieving those things, it's saying, okay, what's that next level? What's that next maximized life or relationship that I'm expecting to be able to live out?
Sometimes this is very hard to achieve because we have golden handcuffs that
Yeah.
tie us to our career, that tie us to our business. And we might intellectually know what we want, but we just don't feel like we can achieve it. It's just not possible. How do you break through that barrier?
Yeah, it's that's a great question because it's a lot of what our struggles are. Us, the people in general, and the people I work with, and even in my own life, my biggest challenge in not just having success but fulfillment in my life was actually believing I was the guy that could. Growing up and trying to achieve in my life, really, I used success in the entrepreneur space, vocationally, athletically, to overcome insecurity and feelings of imposter syndrome for me. And so I understand what that mental battle is that you're telling yourself. You're trying to have those mantras and those affirmations saying that you're going to be able to be successful, be perfect, be amazing in your life, but you have these self-sabotaging thoughts telling you, no, you're not. I know who you are. It didn't work before, it won't work now. And so a lot of that is really starting to be able to master your thought process. And in my own life, in unpacking identity and dealing with imposter syndrome, it was really mastering my thoughts in being able to have my thoughts align again with created value, not what my past has told me. What I tell people, Mark, is this: you're either living from who you're created to be or what your life has told you. The challenge is all of us have had a life that have told us and is continuing to tell us things. When I can separate myself from my experiences in my past and those challenges I've walked through, I can get a more understood version of who I am, a more equitable version of the person I'm created to be, and in that place, start to live that out.
Let's get into your backstory a little bit. What was the defining moment that led you to create Freedom for Life and write Life Mastery?
That's a good question. I think the long term pivotal moment was really trying to live it out myself. Growing up with a father who was very strong in personality, a person really, to be totally honest, that I never felt I could measure up to. And so a lot of my striving for success was trying to prove I was a person of worth and value, trying to prove myself either to my dad or in spite of my dad. And in that place, those things came along, the insecurity, the imposter syndrome, and all of that. But there was this understanding that there was more to life than what I was living, more to me as a man than the person that was showing up all of the time. And so, in that place, it was really in that journey of pulling from personal development and my own spiritual walk, and really trying to create an understanding of how to have transformation, not just change, not just have habits that I have to maintain, because that really is something that just leads to exhaustion, but really having a transformational journey that allows me to really live out that life that I'm created for. I remember I was in my late 20s, I think it was, and my wife and I were expecting twins. So I'm going through this journey, trying to measure up to my dad, trying to succeed my way out of fear of failure and imposter syndrome, right? And what I tell people is success doesn't stop those things, they just come along for the ride. So I was in that stage of my life. And just to be totally transparent, my wife and I were expecting twins and we lost them. At 5.5 months, we lost our daughters. And I remember having a drive from the hospital to my home, left my wife in the hospital after all of the things that we had to do and all of the things that we had to walk through during that process. And I had to come home to my daughter to tell her what had happened. And I remember being in that drive on the way home, a couple of conversations, one conversation with God that I needed to walk through and needed to wrestle with. But the other conversation was understanding. And it's a weird thing that the dad that I looked up to, the person that I was trying to imitate, the person I was trying to prove myself to, trying to show up as him and trying to imitate him didn't stop the grief, the pain, the challenges in my life. It didn't stop the pain that I was walking through at a very real level. And so it was an internal decision at that time that what he was doing wasn't working for me. Trying to be that stoic, that hard as nails, that nothing hurts, real men don't cry, that kind of a personality, trying to be that man, that imitation of who he wasn't working. Success wasn't working, imitating my dad wasn't working. And in that place, it was a point of giving up, and not giving up on life, not giving up on myself, but giving up on somebody else's vision of what it looked like to be me, and trying to measure up to somebody else's idea of who I should be. And so that really was the start of a spiritual journey for me, but also a journey of me starting to unpack the things that are standing in my way, stopping to use somebody else's idea of who I should be as the vision for myself. And that gave me the opportunity to unpack it for myself. And in that place, started to find transformation, Mark, started to find assurance and confidence, not because I had a great skill set, but because I knew that I was a person that was meant for something bigger than where I was at. And in that place started to see it in my own life. And when I saw the success and the transformation and the joy that I got in actually showing up as a guy I wanted to be and I believed I could be, I started to share it with other people and formalize it in trainings and teachings, because those things that you're passionate about, you want to share with those you care about. And in that place started to see that it wasn't an issue that I had, it was an issue that a lot of people had, whether it was insecurity or negative thought patterns or trying to measure up to somebody else's version and vision of who you should be. And that led to starting the course, which was Life Mastery, which led to writing the book, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design.
As young boys, our dad is our superhero.
Yeah.
Every dad strives to be a superhero.
Yeah.
And we want to inspire our children to maybe follow in our footsteps and try to get a few things that we are doing is right. So, from the perspective of a young boy, looking up to their dad, or from the perspective
Yeah.
of a dad who's listening to this, what's the difference between inspiration and imitation? How does one catch themselves and realize I've gone too far on the imitation route as opposed to being inspired by my dad and wanting to do or be like him?
Yeah. I think so. It's an interesting paradox, isn't it? Because there are many things that I got from my father. In fact, I was thinking about my dad. He passed in 2019, but I was thinking several weeks ago that the fortitude, the diligence, the hard work, the stick to itiveness that was something that was passed on to me from my dad has been something, a character trait that has given me dividends throughout my life. So there's things from my father that I've gained that have changed my life and that have set me up for the opportunity for success and things in my life. But there's a challenge in that as a father, first and foremost, in our children, not projecting on them who we are or who we expect them to be. But what I desire as a father and what I tell people that I work with is the best I can do as a dad is to see in you who you're created to be and to speak a life into you until you see it in yourself. Not to make you be an imitation of who I am or my version or vision of what success is supposed to look like, but to see in you the unique attributes of who you are, your character more than your outcomes. And in that pace, speak life into you in those areas. And as a young man, the opposite side, the side where not every young man has a father who is speaking life into them. Not every young man is having a father who is maybe giving him a vision for the future that's greater than where he's at. Many times our parenting can be an unfortunate limitation on our kids, not an inspiration. And so, for a young person in that place, it's grabbing those character traits from your parents, those valuable things and nuggets and things that are helping you in your life. Those small things, doing chores in your house or trying to be diligent in what you're doing, having good grades, finishing things that you start. Those are character building traits. But there's a place where you need to have a vision for your life that's your own. Me imitating my father or using somebody else and imitating what they do really only leads me to second place in my own life. But when you can start to find some of those things, whether it's an artistic endeavor or an athletic ability or an intellectual understanding, those things that make you different, that make you unique, that make you, those are the things that are going to drive the not just career, not just success, but the fulfillment that you're going to have. The more, again, the work that I do, I start with identity. The more you start to understand and see who you're created to be, the easier it is to see where you're going. The easier it is to have a vision for your life. The more I'm trying to use somebody else as an imitation to try and catch up to who they are, or the more I'm trying to give somebody else permission to give me their version of who I'm supposed to be, the more I find myself dissatisfied. And when I reach that road of success, not having the joy that I would like, but just having a completion of some task.
So many of us are our own worst enemies. We don't give ourselves credit for
Yeah.
what we're good at, and we obsess over the things that we're not good at.
Yeah.
How is a person who's their own worst enemy get past their shortcomings and create a vision for themselves that they may not feel today is even possible?
Yeah. That's a great question. So there's three tools that we use to really start to unpack identity in life mastery. One is an identity statement. I call it an I am statement, and we've talked a little bit about that. But the one that really talks about it's those things where I know how maybe you weren't that way, Mark, but I certainly was. If somebody told me to look in the mirror and tell that person who I see, I would find something I'm not good at. I would find something I don't like about me. I'd find something that wasn't as good as somebody else. And so there's this natural understanding when we feel like we're trying to measure up to somebody else or don't have confidence in who we are that we'll look at our those things that somebody's great at versus the things we're not. And we'll use it as a measuring stick and a proof that we're not. What I tell people is this: who you think you are, you'll become. So if we're already starting from a place of inferiority, we'll use things to prove we're right. So you're great at math and I'm horrible at it. Oh, I'm just not as smart as you are. Or you're amazing at this sport and I'm average at it. I guess I'm not meant for success in my life, right? We use these things in our life really is not an objective reality, just proof of what we already believe about ourselves. So one of the tools we use to help to unpack some of that and turn that around, really have a paradigm shift is that I call it a celebration list. I've written 100 about myself. I tell people when we start to write 20. And that celebration list is not what I have accomplished in my life. It's not those things that are on my wall. It's not my diplomas. It's not my trophies. It's not my degrees. It's answering this question. The question is, what do you love about you? Challenging. For a lot of people, it's super challenging because I look at the things I'm not good at, the things I need to improve, the things I need to get better at. But when you start to look at things in yourself that you love, right? Oh, for me, I love the fact that I'm 6'3". I love the fact that I have blue eyes. I love the fact that I love chocolate. I love the fact that I probably have juvenile humor and I laugh at goofy things. Goofy things make me laugh and they bring me joy. My wife, we can go to the same movie and she could find it not funny at all. I could be just laughing loudly because I love those things, right? Those are things about me that I love. And in those plays, here's the interesting thing. I didn't have to measure up to do them. I didn't create my own eyes. Frankly, my own sense of humor was something given to me. My taste in food and those things that are the character traits of who I am aren't things I crafted. They aren't things I worked at. They aren't a skill set I had. So when you start to have some of those things in your list, when you start to create a celebration list and find things in yourself that you love, you give yourself permission to not be perfect for one thing, and you give yourself a better perspective and vision of who you are for another. You start telling your things, all the things you've done wrong. You start recognizing those things that you've done right. And in that place, you start to see a more honest version of who you are.
Who was the first person who truly saw the potential in you? And how did that impact your journey?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. At some level, I think my parents, in some ways, although I was a bit of a tough child I was independent and I was strong willed and grew up in ways that I had my own opinion. So there were challenges in parenting for my parents and trying to rein in someone who was very wild and very energetic. I'll just put it that way. But beyond my parents, I think I would say there's some teachers who saw ability in me beyond the relationships and those people that you have in your life, those friends or family or girlfriends or people that, are they'll be infatuated with you and find the things in you. But sometimes there's those teachers. And I remember having a teacher who saw a skill set in me and an ability to understand whatever that subject matter was. And in that place, it was just a seed that was planted that said that, hey, maybe I do have something in me that's got value, got impact, got worth. And it comes down to those things, right? It's the words we say and it's the words we receive. It's the things that people say that you take in ownership of. And many times we take the things that people have said that have put us down, that have limited us, that have told us what we're done wrong and where we're not measuring up, versus those times when people plant a seed that says, I see you and I see the value in you and I appreciate that about you.
So there's introspection, right? Where you are helping clients understand what is good about them, celebrate what's good about them, take the best pieces, create their own version of a future and a vision. And then there's this other
Yeah.
aspect where we rely on people to sometimes show us things that we don't see ourselves, right? But we need people to see the potential is us and spark that. Oh, wait a second, I am good at this. I never realized that. But it's for all my life. How do we balance these two things? Because sometimes when we are so within ourselves, we lock ourselves out from other people seeing us.
Yeah, I think, and here's the truth of the matter that are you showing up authentically as who you are or the person you want people to see you as? Because there's a bit of a challenge in that, right? In that sometimes, again, with certain types of relationships and emotional connections, you're not showing up as who you are, but as who you want them to see. And in that place, they're celebrating the imitation of you that you're trying to give them. And it's first off showing up authentically, loving who you are in that place, living from that place. Again, it's that I am statement, living from your identity. So whether you appreciate who I am, you see the value in me or the impact I'm supposed to have, or you don't, if I'm walking authentically in who I am, then that's its own validation. But in that place, what you'll find is people who are drawn to your authenticity, who are drawn to your vulnerability, who are drawn to your strength and your confidence and your assurance, not because there's an arrogance about you, but because there's an honesty in who you are. And so, first and foremost, the people that I work with, we work with you seeing you first, because many times we try and measure up to what we think other people expect us to be versus who we are authentically created to be. And that can be exhausting. But in that place, when you let people in, when you have authentic relationships, when you have a unity of care for each other, like myself and my wife, we've been married 33 years. And in relationships, there's a guy named Danny Silk who has the circles of influence and the circles of relationship that he talks about. And he talks about having these circles one inside the other. And the closest circle for me is my relationship with God. And nobody supersedes that. Nobody takes place of that. Nobody gets time from that. The second relationship in my life is my relationship with my wife. And she is the person I'm the closest to in all of my life. She gets the most of my time. She gets the most honest of my responses. She gets the deepest parts of my heart. She gets the most vulnerable parts of who I am because we have that relationship of trust and of care that we've built over time and a unity of purpose and a desire in our relationship. When you have somebody in your life like that, you can trust yourself to be honest in front of them and trust yourself to be open and vulnerable in that place because what I've invested in a relationship, you've invested in me and this relationship as well. There's a commonality of our unity of purpose in our relationship. When you start to have a relationship like that, then the person you are having the relationship with is somebody you built trust. You know that they're honest, you know that they're open, you know that they'll want the best for you, but they'll also call you on your BS on those times when you're not being honest in that place developed over time, you can have a relationship where you can trust the things that they say about you. And it's the things that actually are going to have an impact. I remember, Mark, one of the things that my wife said to me about me, it was several years ago, actually, at this point, it really stunned me. She said, "You're one of the smartest people I know." And I don't know if I am one of the smartest people she knows or not, but what it did in hearing that from somebody that I trusted, that I was open and honest and vulnerable with, was more than I think a person has ever given me. In that it wasn't just her love for me, it was the thing that she saw in me, the person and values she saw from me. I never expected, we never had conversations about, but it was that statement from somebody that I had trust in, that trusted me, that had the biggest impact in my life. So it took the work of me unpacking identity and feeling confident in who I was that allowed that relationship to develop so that I could have those moments like that. If you start with other people, you're living from their yes and their encouragement of you. When you start with who you are, you can invite in authentic, vulnerable relationships that'll matter more than anything.
Was there a time when you felt like the hero in hiding? How did you break through that?
Yeah, for years. That young man of 15, 16, 17 years old who wanted to be bold, who wanted to be outspoken, who wanted to raise his hand for those hard things, to invest in those things that were challenging, who wanted to have the businesses, the athletic and academic accomplishments, who wanted to have those things, but held back because the fear of failure was something that was stronger than the belief in success. So yeah, that was the central driver in everything I did with Life Mastery was this belief that there was more, that there was a person on the inside that was wanting to get out, that there was more in who I was and what I was capable of and the impact I could have and the person I could become than what I was showing up as. And yeah, that
Why
was the
was the
driver of
fear?
everything.
Why was the fear of failure stronger than the desire to succeed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because, as again, I tell people, you either learn from who you're created to be or what your life has told you. Academically, my life had told me that I wasn't as good as. Not that I didn't have intelligence in certain areas, but I remember there was an incident, right? So, going from first grade to the second grade, I remember my parents having a conversation with my teacher in front of me, where that teacher said to them that her recommendation was that they hold me back and have me take the grade again because I wasn't as developed as I needed to be for the following grade. That young man hearing that conversation, my parents didn't. They put me into the next grade and I moved forward from there. But there was an understanding I had from that conversation, which was, you're not as smart as everybody else. The interesting thing, Mark, for a lot of us, really, to be honest, I haven't met a person yet that this isn't true. It's not the experiences you walk through, it's the identity statement you take from it. It's not the challenge or the struggle or the things that you failed at, in quotes, but what does that experience say about you? So we take an identity statement from it and we live it out. So that young man then going first grade to second grade, he heard, you're not as smart as everybody else. You're not as capable as everybody else. You aren't as good as all of these other students, literally everybody else in the class. And you don't understand that you take it as an identity statement. But when you struggle with algebra in school, there's this understanding, there's proof I'm not as smart as everybody else. When you're getting a C grade or a D grade, or you fail on a test, or you don't know the answers when you're called on in the middle of the class, right? There's these un, unspoken understandings that you're not as smart as everybody else. How you unpack that, how you change that is confronting a lie with the truth. That teacher didn't say I wasn't as smart as, I couldn't accomplish things like everybody else. She was just looking at my academic performance in a moment over a school year and saying, he doesn't seem to be as developed as those other people. I went on to take courses, getting my bachelor's degree, take calculus in college and pass it, the highest level, at least at that point of math. I haven't followed up to see if there's higher levels now. So it wasn't a truth about my capability. It was a snapshot picture of the moment in time that I was in. But when you're living from that place of understanding, taking identities from your experience, you'll have the results that you believe you're supposed to have. And so that's where fear of failure comes in. There's this, yeah, there is the opportunity for failure. I've done it here and here. Obviously, in those places, I've also succeeded in many ways in going through that. But that voice is so loud telling you who you are, even if it's lying to you, you'll believe it if you don't have a counteraction of the truth of who you're created to be to counteract that lie.
How do you tackle that? Because we it's correct that we define our capabilities by our performance. If it takes me 10 seconds to run 50 yards, that's the performance that I have. And it's natural to start believing that's the capability that I have. I may not run 50 yards in 4 seconds. So, how do you separate the reality of performance in any aspect of life versus the identity that you're supposed to have so you can go beyond what is defined by those capabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the other side of that identity piece that we talk about with the people that I work with is what I tell people is you're not the sum total of your past, your pains, your experiences, and the challenges you've walked through, but you're also not the sum total of your successes, your accomplishments, the things that you've done well in your life. And the reason we talk about that is I'm sure know some people and maybe have worked with some who They are tied up in their success. I am, it's not a person who has a role, it's a person who is the role. I am a CEO, I am a doctor, I am a this, I am a that. And in that place, you start to become those things in your life, and success becomes a substitute for identity, not an outworking of it. And so when we start to unpack identity, it's character traits, not successes and a resume that we work with people on. And so, yes, I won't ever be an Olympic runner. I won't ever win the 100-meter dash or any of those things, right? So it's finding my identity apart from my accomplishments. And it doesn't mean you don't accomplish things in your life and live at high levels. So I have Brett and Vance and John and Evelyn and so many people that I've worked with who have had high levels of success in their life. So it's not minimizing your success or act like it doesn't matter. I'm okay with who I am and I don't need anything. It's saying, instead of using success as a substitute for identity, how about succeeding because of your identity? When I start to understand who I am, I'm starting to succeed in those areas where I'm meant to. And I find that I'm able to succeed at higher levels because of it.
What is your favorite framework or tool for helping someone move from the fear of action?
Yeah. So we have a 3-step transformational strategy. It's mastering your thoughts, words, and actions. And that's not anything new with people, but the difference in what I do versus what I've been trained on is with some other folks in some other ways is I don't have the people use affirmations in the way that they typically do. So it's the idealized version of who you are or the perfect version of who I can be, and continuing to say that over and over again until I find that person lived out. Well, that, at least for me and the people I've worked with, has never worked because I'm not an idealized version. I need to have something that's grounded in the truth of who I am. So in that place, it's not me becoming the next Elon Musk, the next LeBron James, the next whoever, Chris Bumstead, if you want to talk about the world of bodybuilding. But it's saying that, okay, when I can start with identity, create an I am statement for myself, a celebration list, and an accomplishment list. Those are the 3 steps that we use. When I start to use affirmations to master my thoughts, I start to use ones that align with my identity, not a substitute that I'm trying to reach out to, that next amazing person in my life. And so for me, the tool starts with that. It's mastering your thoughts. Everything starts with your thoughts. Who you believe you are, you'll become. But in the place, what we use is, okay, then the thoughts that I want to think, the things I want to pre-frame, the affirmations I want to use should be aligned with my identity, who I'm created to be. Character statements, not outcomes, not past. So in that place, we use those as the affirmations in our mastering your thoughts. Mastering your words, it's the same things. Your words do 2 things, right? They project out the belief of who you believe you are, and they give you instructions to live it out. So when you say that you're a failure, when you say that you're horrible, when you say that you're stupid, you're not just saying those things out and showing what your thoughts are, but you're also giving your brain instructions to live out. So you'll make decisions that are limiting. You'll make actions that'll hold you back. You'll make silly opportunities come along that would being negative impacts versus positive ones. And then we get to actions. And actions, what I tell people is, so we understand the thoughts that we're thinking, we have it aligned with our identity, we're speaking out the truth of who we are and the expectation we have for our circumstance. And then the other one is the third, the actions. What actions are you taking? Are they aligned with who you're created to be, or are they limiting you from it? And so the question that I ask them is, that hero person, what does that person look like lived out? Walking into that boardroom, going into that gym, or striving for that business promotion, that thing that you're looking for. Before you walk in, we of course have breath exercises we use, but beyond those, the question I want you to ask walking in the room is, what does the hero me look like lived out here? What decisions would he make? What thoughts would he have? What words would he use? What stature would he come in with? What things would he use as action points and next steps and ideas and thoughts and actions? When you get a vision for that, now do that thing. And for us, that shows the person shows up as the person they're supposed to be. They create the decisions they're supposed to have. They go into the boardroom and create the presentation. They walk in
But how is
confidence and
that not
assurance.
how is that not creating imposter syndrome? Because we are asking you to think of a version of yourself that you're not and carry out those tasks. For someone who's already struggling with imposter syndrome, this is even more imposters, isn't it?
No, not at all. Because the actions you're taking, the hero you're seeing, the thoughts that you're using, all are aligned with your own identity statement, who you're created to be. I'm not trying to measure up to somebody else. I'm recognizing who I am and allowing that person to flourish in that role. So it's not me trying to measure up to somebody else or feel like I'm not good enough. It's me walking in knowing exactly who I am. And the question that I tell them is, are you the answer walking in the room, or the question to be figured out? When I understand I'm the answers, when I understand who I am and I'm able to walk in with the assurance of who that person is, not trying to measure up with some ideal or some other version that I'm trying to be.
But Where does the self belief and self sabotage, where does the increase in self belief and lack of self sabotage stop? And where does wishful thinking begin? Because there's a lot of people who's going about saying a lot of wonderful things about themselves to make themselves feel good, but it's just not true. So are we really lying to ourselves at the very end? How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think for me, it starts with the beginning and it starts with identity. What is your I am statement? Who are you created to be? And in that place, it's not me trying to imitate somebody else, but recognizing character traits. And so for us, it comes with the foundational work of the I am statement, celebration list, things I love about myself. I'm not making something up that I'm not. I'm recognizing something that I am, and I'm giving that the forefront of the mental capacity to be able to be. And then there's the affirmations or the acknowledgments. It's understanding the things that you've done that you've succeeded at. What are the things that I've done? So with those three things in place, you start to have a more well-rounded version, understood version of who you are. I'm not trying to measure up to somebody else. I'm not limiting myself by the failures or the things I've walked through. I'm getting an accurate and I not just idealized, but perfect version of who I am, not creating somebody I'm not and trying to live up to it.
One of the things that you talk about that I love is the idea of changing your life one thought at a time. Can you expand on that and show us like what an example would that be in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of us, the book title in completion is Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, not by default. A lot of times we live our life by default, not because we've chosen to, but because we've believed the strategy that is, I have my thoughts and then I have to attack them when they come up. And so for us, it's understanding that you can either fight a war after you're in it or you can be trained for it before you go. And so mastering your thoughts is really using your thoughts ahead of time, not trying to fight off the bad ones when they come. And so you're dealing with your thoughts one thought at a time is really you starting to take the mastery approach instead of the management approach in your life. Management approach is dealing with the fruit, not the root. I have a fear that comes up. I use my mantra, my affirmation over and over again until that fear subsides and I'm able to take that action or make that decision or take that direction. And in that place, you're always having to do it because I'm dealing with the emotion. I'm not dealing with the root. The root is an identity, the fruit is an emotion. So in that place, what I tell the people that I work with is what I invite them to do is to master your thoughts, which means choose the thoughts you have before you need them. And so for us, the affirmations we use, you'll use during the day. You'll hopefully do them first thing in the morning. When I was working through really hard in my life mastery work, it was 4 or 5 times a day. I'd have my affirmations on a recorder on my phone and I would listen to them over and over again, reminding myself of who I am. Come to find out, when you start to do that, you start to actually show up as the person you're created to be. So it's really mastering them one thought at a time, but it's taking a proactive approach of saying, I'm not waiting till negative things happen and then I have this response or this fear or this worry or the stress, but I'm actually pre-framing my life by starting my day reminding myself of who I am. So when activities happen, challenges, stress comes up, I show up as that person. It's one thought at a time, but it's doing it by mastering your thoughts, not trying to manage them.
Not many of us go through life without experiencing negative recurring thought patterns. Funnily, we all know we're doing it. Logically, we all know we need to stop doing it. But emotionally, we just can't stop it. And we start having these recurring negative thought patterns. And like, oh my God, I know, I shouldn't be thinking. But emotionally, it just continues happening. How does one go about bridging that gap and changing that logic into actionable emotional control?
Yeah, it's a great question. So here's the challenge with most of us is that, again, life by default, not by design. We try and manage the life that we're living. And so that means that we're always fighting against the emotion that we're feeling. We're not taking hold of the root, which is the identity statement that we're believing. Here's the truth. So I'm walking into a conversation with my wife and we have a disagreement. We're in a disagreement about a certain subject. This young man who maybe grew up with relationships that didn't work out, maybe a marriage that failed, or something that happened where you felt like you were somebody who wasn't worth loving, wasn't able to do that. When my wife and I have a disagreement, there's a feeling that comes up. The feeling is worry, stress, right? Understanding that shame, maybe those things, those emotions, because I know what this means. That young man that I was when I was struggling academically, and we were in business, and your expenses outlast your income. And in that place, there's those negative thought patterns that you've talked about where it's, oh, I've blown it. I should have known that bill was, and I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. This business is going to fail and it's going to be all my fault. I'm going to let my whole family down. These are conversations I had in walking through my life mastery journey. And so we fight off the negative emotion, we give ourselves an affirmation and we deal with it. And then we have to deal with it again. And then we have to deal with it again. But when you start to take the root, when you start to say, okay, I'm feeling like I'm a failure, and you start to unpack some of that, understand where it's come from, we could get into the conversation about how to do that. We have what we call the four pillars of life mastery, or identity, experience, meaning, and emotion. You're either living from identity or you're living from your experiences, not the ones you currently are going through, but the ones in the past that have told you what you should do. And it's not the experience you walk through, it's the meaning you take from it. Again, that identity statement you take. So in that place where the business is maybe taking a negative downturn, the meaning isn't the business is taking a negative downturn. There's just a challenge in the economy. There's things that are happening, right? The meaning that you typically take from it is, I'm a failure. I blew it. I can't believe it. I'm so dumb. I should have known better. Why did I even get in this business? Why did I even start it? I should have just kept my job. I should have just done this, that, or the other. And so when you have that meaning that you take from an experience, what's the emotion that you're going to choose or use? Fear, worry, stress, anxiety, imposter syndrome, all of those things that happen with that. Everybody's attacking the emotion. Nobody's attacking the meaning. They're using the experience to tell you who you are, but nobody started with identity. So take that same experience of a negative downturn, but I'm a person who walks in my life mastery journey. I know who I am. I've created an identity statement, celebration list, accomplishment list. And in that place, I walk in knowing I'm the answer to the circumstance I'm walking into. I'm not the question to be figured out. Does it mean that everything goes perfectly for me? No, but it means that I know I'm always greater than the challenges I'm walking into. And in that place, negative downturn, expenses high, income low. Okay, now I'm looking for solutions. I'm not looking to see that the end of this is us to crash and burn, but oh, this is a challenge to get through. What's the answer that I need to have? What's the pivoting we need to do? What's the marketing we need to create? What's the internal processes we need to modify so that we can change what we're doing as outcomes in our life? Who you are walking into it is who you'll be walking out. All of that comes from a process of really starting to understand your emotions, see where they're coming from, and find out what's the identity you're taking from it, and doing some reverse engineering in that. What it is, as from the scientific side, is creating new neuroplastic structures in your brain, changing the way you're thinking. What I call neuroplastic structures are the shortcuts to decision making in our life. They're actual structures in your brain. They're created by doing three things. It's the thoughts you think repetitively, it's the words you say consistently, and it's the actions you take constantly. If you change those three things, you actually change the neuroplastic structures, which means that you actually change the response you'll have, the things you'll think, and the actions you'll take. It takes a period of time. They say 21 days, but that's not really true. That's the start of initiating a habit. To make automaticity happen, which means automatically doing something, not just automatically thinking you should do it, that comes through three sessions of that. So 63 days, they found through neuroscience. When you get to the place of doing that, now all of a sudden you have changed. When I change the structure, the quick decisions I'm making in my life, the neuroplastic structures of my brain, I've changed the way I think, I changed the way I respond, I changed the way I feel, and I changed the actions that I take. If I don't do that and I just fight off the emotion, I try and find ways of getting around it, I try and find ways of managing it, I'll always be in that place of that hamster wheel of emotional challenges. But if I can find the tools, living life by design, not by default, living it through a place of mastery, not management, what I'll find over a period of time is I've actually changed, not just changed, but transformed.
How do we go about developing this strong character without burning out or becoming a perfectionist?
Yeah, the interesting thing is the more I know who I am, the more I can celebrate me, the more I see that I have accomplishments on a daily basis. And it's not just me as Mark, it's any of us individually. If we can look at ourselves honestly and authentically, the more I can see those things in myself, the more I give myself grace to not have to be perfect. The less I know authentically who I am, the less I find value in who I am, the more I have to be perfect. Many times that'll come from a childhood of feeling like you're either not getting attention, that middle child like I was, or you're somebody who you're trying to measure up academically so you can get attention or love or care or affirmation in your life, or you're somebody who's determined that those negative outcomes that I had in my life will never happen again. And how do I have them happen? How do I change that? By making sure that I'm managing, controlling, overseeing my life in such a way that if it's perfect, then nothing will be bad. So at the end of the day, the more you know who you are, the less you have to use your life as a substitute. The less you know who you are, the more your life has to make up the difference.
If listeners could walk away with just one life changing truth from this episode, what would you want it to be?
There's this understanding, it's a physiological truth that you can never have two thoughts at the same time. The thing that most people don't realize is you can actually choose the thoughts you think. You're not meant to just be responding to the thoughts that pop up that seem to automatically happen. But if you can master your life, you can actually choose the thoughts you think. You can actually pre-frame your life by choosing the thoughts before you're walking into your actions. And in that place, you'll change your life forever. The question I would give you is this: are your thoughts aligned with who you're created to be? Because if they're not, they're lying to you. There is no difference. If they're aligned with who you're created to be, or they're lying to you, limiting you from the life that you could live. And they're your choice. You can actually choose to master your life, live by design, which means that I'm going to take control of what I think, not just try and manage the thoughts that come up.
Mark, thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you. Any last words for audience members where they can find you? Any giveaways you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I try and be a one-stop shop. So my one-stop shop is my website, which is freedom-4-life.net. Freedom-4-life.net. My course is out there, Life Mastery. I have a very minimally cost ebook version of my book. You can have it there. Grab it for less than $8, and you can have it on your any device you have. There's also what I call the diagnostic tool that's out there as well. That's free. That tool will give you the ability to say, hey, is this life mastery thing for me? Is this something I need? Do a quick evaluation of yourself, your decisions, your responses to things, and you'll start to find out where you're at in the journey. And it not only give you the idea of where you're at, but give you what's that next step so I can be better. That's free on my website as well.
Mark, thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
Much great being here.